Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the regular council meeting to order. And I would like to start off by wishing everyone a happy new year. And before we get into tonight's agenda, there are some comments that, or some feedback I would like to share with all of you, both council staff and everyone here as well, and everyone watching at home. The holiday season always gives us a time to reflect on the past year, reflect on highlights, lowlights, and with the new year, it's an opportunity to find a way to move forward. A definite highlight for me was the spirit of our holiday season, the generous donations made to the food bank, the beauty of our town core, and how everyone came together in the spirit of celebration with the Santa Parade and just really enjoying the season. Some lowlights that left a shadow with me are a few things that I feel need to be resolved before we head into this new year. One of them is committees, the other is the financial plan, and the third one is some things with the public. And I think some things went wrong that need to be corrected, and I want to take the time to just bring this forward and to share my thoughts on it. So starting off with the committees, a number of committees were wound up for the year, and this isn't because anyone was fired per se, it was because the work had been completed. We had members of the community put forward a lot of time and contributions to their efforts, and the work is now done, and it's up to council now to move forward on these items. So rather than meeting to meet on a continuous basis and forming a long to-do list that council needs to look at, it's really time for the members of the community, for us all to shift gears, to council to ratify and move forward, to think about it as we plan with the budget, our staffing resources, and to take the good work that's been brought forward and to realize it. I think there's a number of organizations in Sooke that would benefit from the solid community leadership that we witnessed, so I want to thank everybody for their contributions. We did come forward with a new set of committees that was endorsed with council. However, there has been some reservations with some councillors wanting to sit on the committees. So what I want to do is send it back to council, back to the drawing board, so it's something that we can all work out together and to find something that really draws the interests and the talents of the councillors and to find a better way forward. So I'd like to ask my councillors to give thought on how they want to participate, if they're even needed, and we'll move forward that way. But I do think it needs further dialogue, and I think together we'll come up with something that will really work for us. With the financial plan amendment bylaw, I want to thank our finance director for bringing it forward. It wasn't an easy task for him, and I think it caught us all off guard, with some of us feeling disappointed, frustrated, left behind, or concerned. And I think going forward, we really need to focus on what is in the plan, and if something is not planned for, is to realize, do we want to move forward with this? Can it wait till next year? And if a financial plan amendment is needed, then we amend it before we spend. And I think that'll just give it the due respect that it's needed. In terms of the public, I've heard that, and certainly public input has been limited or denied, in some cases refused. And at the last meeting, I got caught up, I think, in trying to make the best of rules and work safe and encouraging public input, but in the end I shut it down, and that likely angered and disappointed and embarrassed a member of the public. So I want to offer apology to Ms. Gail Hall. I think your contributions are valuable, and I know that often we may disagree on the outcome, but certainly you've sat here longer than I have, and we really need to find a way to remedy this quickly. So I have some solutions, which are always good. I think in the meantime, with the committees, we'll just revert back to a committee of the whole structure. It's just for now, because we have to enter into the budget deliberations. So starting the 5th Monday of this month, I know there's a few items that council wants to delve into, and I want to start that dialogue. One of them is how we handle business license, as an example. Are we going to enforce the sign bylaw? as another one. What about the amenity contributions? And I'm certain that there's other ones that really need to have a conversation about. From this, maybe a working group can spin off from it and delve into it further. But I think just having the conversation about what's working and what isn't working can maybe address some of that. I talked about the financial plan bylaw. I think council really needs to ask, and I've talked to our finance people as well, that every matter that comes forward will ask with the financial implication. Is it in the budget? Where is it coming from? And if we really want to move forward, what steps proactively do we need to take? In terms of the public input, in our procedural bylaw, this is the council chambers. The public input is an opportunity for the public to address council on matters within the agenda. If there's questions for staff, or if you want a question directed towards staff, that's what the administration office downstairs is for. It's open 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Staff are contactable by phone or email. And so that's where the address to staff happens there. This is an address to council. And so your input is valued. And then as chair, if you have questions, I'll take the questions, but I wait till the relevant section in the report comes forward. So A, it could be in the staff report so they can address it as it comes up, or B, it gives them time to ponder the question and come up with an answer so we're not answering off the cuff. I think anyone in their day-to-day work would appreciate a pause before answering, and that's why there's a certain structure available. If you have a problem with staff, then I would encourage you to contact our CAO, and she can talk to the department head. Failing that, you can contact myself. If you don't want to talk to me, there's other counselors available. We can set up a meeting with a couple if you have a problem with how HR is being handled. But you can't flog people in the public. It's just like when you go to a store, if you have a problem with someone serving you, a manager nowadays cannot humiliate that person in front of other staff and in front of other public. It has to be done in a private setting. That's just the reality of it. And we have had conversations, Councillor Ray has contacted WorkSafe, and we want to have that come forward. The days of just public humiliation of staff. Now for us, you can bring it on. That's what we're here for. That is our role. And you don't hesitate. We get the emails, the phone calls, we talk to people in the grocery store, at our street, at our homes. Even go to my mom and dad, that's happened. So certainly that is our role. But we're trying to move through a lot of business. We have a forecast of probably a 3% growth, maybe more in this area. There's a lot of demand to be here. So it's important that we move through the business of the district in a very systematic way. And it may be firm, but it's a fair process. And our corporate officer will be bringing the council procedure bylaw forward, so there's a way to improve it. It was adopted in 2010. Maybe it's time to refresh it for the future. So I look forward to that coming forward in due course. But I do realize that the public piece is very important. We've all heard at council orientation that there's 3 components in making our decisions. There's the staff report, there's the debate that happens at the table, and it's the feedback from members of the community. So what I'm proposing to start effective the 4th Monday of this month is from 6 o'clock to, say, 6:40. There'll be an open mic session where I'd like to invite the public to come in to talk to any matter that's upsetting them. I'll be here. I welcome councillors to attend, staff if they're available, and I'll loosely keep time depending on who's here, and it'll just be an opportunity to hear from you and then to find a mechanism to answer it. But I do also want to hear from you as to maybe transit improvements that you'd like to see. What are some advances in medical, or do you have a concern about the development process? So it's a way for us to gather, and then we'll sort of wind it up about 22 and then head into the regular council meetings. So this will eliminate the in-camera meetings that are on the 2nd and the 4th. We'll have one on the 3rd Monday as necessary. And I would just like to encourage you to bring forward your ideas, especially now as we head into the budget cycle. It won't be perfect. I'm just coming up with something. And certainly, we're all available through the other means, if you like, as I mentioned, a phone. Every councillor has a public phone number that they can be reached at. They have their emails available. Many have Facebook sites, Twitter feeds. and randomly about town as we go. But this would be a more formal setting here in Chambers. It seems to be that might address some concerns. Naturally, though, if you're speaking about a public hearing item, I'll refer you or have you delayed till that item comes forward in the proper section, as well as other public input parts. And maybe as we're talking, if something's heated about staff, we can sort of have a dialogue back and forth about where WorkSafe kicks in, what it does it, and then I can really get to what your question is and then hopefully have it answered. So I'd like to try that going forward in the year. I do think the year ahead is going to be a very positive one for Sooke. There's been good momentum happening in place. Everyone's working really hard. We all had a good rest, so it's time to roll up our sleeves and get to work and to really focus on realizing the potential. Everyone here wants to see that happen. We all believe in the people of this community and the potential that we have here, and we want to accomplish something that betters the lives of people both today and in the future. So I respectfully ask for everyone's consideration of that. I look forward to hearing from you on the 4th for anything that isn't on tonight's agenda or that agenda, and just looking forward to getting that through. So thank you very much for your time. And I'll now ask Council to approve the agenda with the addition of new business items 1 and 2. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any questions? All those in favor, opposed, motion's carried. And I also just want to turn the microphone over to our CAO, who's going to be introducing our new fire chief. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is our new fire chief's very first council meeting. And I wanted to, I've already introduced him to Mayor and Council, but I'd like to introduce him to the gallery. If you could please stand, Ken. This is Kenn Mount. He comes to us with loads of experience. He's our new fire chief. He started on January 1st. And I'd like the community to welcome him with warm wishes for a very successful year. I would also... Thank you. I would also like to publicly acknowledge Russ Cameron. Please stand, Russ. He came to the district in the summer when we're in a bit of a pinch. He's provided excellent leadership to our fire department on an interim basis. He's done tremendous work for us, and I want to publicly acknowledge him and his contributions to the district of Sooke. Thank you, Russ.
Thank you very much for your assistance, Chief Cameron, and welcome, Chief Mount. You've chosen an awesome community to call home, so welcome aboard. Okay, our next item of business is adoption of the minutes of the regular meeting from December the 12th. Moved adoption by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Are there any corrections? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay. We have 4 delegations this evening. Our first one is Mouck Marine Energy Productions Limited. If you could please come forward and turn on your microphone. You have 5 minutes, and just in the essence of time. Nice to have a chair. Oh, that's good. Okay. You just, yeah. Thank you and welcome.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor, Council, and everybody else. Rob, good to see you again. So the main thing is back on December 13th, 2015, I came in front of Council to discuss the Illuminate the Way Independent Energy Infrastructure Upgrade, specifically Phase 1, Section 1 Municipal Movement, which is the very basis standpoint that is for the Illuminate the Way, because everything starts at the municipal level. So just a quick reminder that the Illuminate the Way Independent Energy Infrastructure Upgrade is a smooth flow, assembly line-like seamless integration into the economy, stimulating economic growth and developments. Most Illuminate the Way Independent Energy Infrastructure Upgrade, including the municipal movement, reads like stereo instructions. So you complete the obligations to designate order, and it'll create the trend and provide the no-cost infrastructure upgrade and the economic boost. Now, this is already on file from the December 13th, and mainly the main thing about the municipal movement is the last section here on the second page. because there's going to be substantial equity value from an independent energy device and advanced energy management installation due to its power generating capabilities and supplemental income capabilities, which will solve a lot of problems. But the main thing is, especially with BC assessments increase in the property tax value, up to 40% because of the market being so hot, this will actually provide some relief to not only homeowners but renters and pretty much everybody. The added equity value from independent energy devices and advanced smart energy management system installations will push to be non-taxable and exempt from property taxes. So the equity value increase would push BC assessment to make it non-taxable as part of an energy. What the word would be. We'll get back to that. But the installations will be adding anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000 worth of equity with both combined, the independent energy device and advanced smart energy management system, and that is based off the generating capabilities and the income generating capabilities, of course. We will be working with BC Hydro as well. Their independent power plan is okay, but it's not designed for the client. So they're next in line here, but so really to cut it short here, what I'd like to do is just, if we may, request a few things. One thing is Mouck Energy Productions is seeking a letter of approval from you, Mayor and Council, for the Illuminate the Way Independent Energy Infrastructure Upgrade Phase 1, Section 1, the municipal movement. I will be sending you guys a revised version of it. And then a letter of recommendation for Mouck Energy Productions itself, because we do have a few grants coming out here from the SDTC, which is the Science Development Technology Committee, and also a leadership grant coming out this month. So we're working an application with that, and it'd be nice to help bolster that. Also, the plan is to open a full-service facility here in Sooke, most likely in Otter Point Industrial. There'll also be a retail location here, probably around Village Mall or Evergreen. And just remember that Mouck Energy Productions we do independent energy, so it's not just NREM tech, which is natural rotary electromagnetics. We do plasma, we do zero-point energy, and all that. We have multiple working devices. We also do things into healthcare using these advanced technologies, which are actually very well, and they're documented throughout world-renowned medical scientists and doctors. We also are working with the Kesh Foundation, if you ever heard of it. They're mainly the plasma, dealing with that, but they also have 80 countries on board. So, it's a unilateral push to get movement said, like you just said here at the beginning here, for the, the momentum is what we're doing. So this will be the great start in that momentum. So what I'd like to do initially is arrange a private meeting between all of us, and then arrange a meeting between all of us and Horgan and BC Assessment, because the political push will be, of course, exceptional as well to help meander BC Assessment into making those changes. That's pretty much it for me now. I only got 20 seconds left, but if we can, which would be also a bonus, is we could start an electronic petition to also further the push for, using that for, momentum for also BC Assessment when that initial meeting comes. I'll send everybody a revised version of the Illuminate the Way municipal movement section, because this one's a little out of date. But other than that, everything should be good, and it should add the positive relief for everybody, especially with the cost of living and everything increasing. So, absolutely positive, and I'm glad to see you're here for this one.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think so. You're asking for a letter of support, but you're going to send us a revised document first, then,
yes,
that we can. Yes,
I would like to. I'll send you a revised document, and then a letter of approval on that one, and then we'll sit down for a private meeting, and work from there, and that'll be for the approval for the help out with the grants to really get going here.
Okay, so in terms of a private meeting, we can't have we can't have a quorum of council meet.
Okay.
But if you contact me, then I can float the invitation out to other councillors and staff, and then perhaps
Excellent.
A councillor can join me, and we can then report back to council as a whole. Otherwise, we'd be looking at this forum again.
Excellent.
Okay,
Excellent.
we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is Victoria Pet Food and Feral Cat Rehabilitation Society. Ms. Margarita Dominguez, welcome.
Good night. Happy New Year. Thank you for having me. I'm first going to talk about the CRD parks that I discovered when our society doesn't apply anymore for grants because we do not support gambling. And for that reason, we are always poor, and we have to at least to ask to waive the fees for the events. We asked to do a dog walk in puddles. We call the CRD to ask. They say that and the only way that they can waive the fees is if we do something for the parks. And then I say, well, we want to do a dog walk for the park that perhaps we are going to get in Sooke for the dog walk park, and off-leash park in Sooke. And then they say, well, that doesn't count. It's only for the parks that the CRD owns. And then I think that with all the money that the property that the district is giving the CRD to the parks, I think so that if those fees perhaps can get to you, or if we want to do more events, more dog walks in CRD parks, why that can be only accepted for the CRD parks and not the Sooke parks. I don't know if I explain myself well. Sorry, my English I want to hurry up and got confused. Do you understand? Yeah? Okay, great. And the second thing is the dog park for Chihuahua. The Miss Park is on offer behind Western Foods. There's a place where the homeless live and have lived there for a long, long time. Now, if we remove the homeless from there, they have the right to sleep in parks. And that is not going to be very good for the tourist. That only needs one leader, like it happened in Tent City. One leader that leads and say, well, we are going to do this, and then they do it. I suggest you to consider other options if you are going to remove the homeless from there. Because I know several girls, for example, that they come sometimes during the summertime for girls is to sing in front of Western Foods or in the parks, and they're homeless. And that is dangerous for them sometimes, to be sleeping in the middle of the parks. I don't know, it's an opinion. The third thing is our shed in front of the skate park has been completely vandalized, continues to be. It's very expensive for us to move it. Hopefully somebody's going to help us soon, apparently, and because of the toll that the shed is. And we would like to have, if you can find money somewhere, because the police, we need more police. That is for sure that we need more police in Sooke. We have informed them about everything that happened, even told them who stole, who were the thieves. And the police don't have enough staff to do this, which means our door is completely broken. They took the frame. And I'm bringing you this because they are we found this. Children are selling drugs inside of the shed. And this is to prove you. The police, this is teenagers or children, 10, 11 years old. They are using the shed just to sell drugs. And it's not the police fault if they haven't investigated. It's because they don't have enough patrol, enough people. And the other thing is because putting lights on the trails, especially the ones that go to Sea Park, that is a place where all the children go. That is a question of just finding one child predator that for something bad to happen. I think I would like to see something happen in that trail at least, please. And the last thing is remember that drugs and bandidos, when it comes to guns, they are everywhere. They are not just in Colombia. They are here too. And some of them, they have cattle too, and they have big pieces of land. There are bandidos here too. And there are dogfights we are growing, which I apologize, Kevin, for contradicting your gun issue, but it's very dangerous. We already have enough problems here, and we don't have enough police. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dominguez. It's lots to think about as we go forward.
Thank you.
Okay, our next one is firearms and bow use bylaw issues from Mr. Boucher? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Hi, Your Worship, Council. Happy New Year. My name is Eric Boucher. I reside at 1900 Connie Road. Thanks for the opportunity to speak on this issue tonight. And specifically, my concerns are related to bylaw number 659, prohibition of firearms and bow use. I appreciate the work by staff that's gone into preparing these submissions for you so far that they've made to Council. And I appreciate that you're not going to vote on it this evening, but I'm hoping that by presenting some additional information and viewpoints that we might get this bylaw correct before it's actually adopted. By way of background, my wife and I, Heather, own rural acreage in Sooke, and it's zoned ALR, and it's also within the legal hunting boundaries as in accordance with the provincial regulations. And we've just about finished fencing our property, and I'm hoping that this year we'll achieve bona fide farm status. So right now we're hobby farmers. And I'm also a hunter and have been a bow hunter for 35 years. So I currently legally hunt with a bow on my own acreage, and that was my expectation when I bought the property. And this bylaw certainly restricts that. The background to this bylaw, as I understand it, however, was that, and as I think Councillor Casper pointed out, Director Hicks raised the issue to Council, the problem of an increasing number of non-migratory geese in the district, and encouraged Council to work towards addressing this issue, and made some positive suggestions on how to mitigate current and potentially very significant impact in the future, as other municipalities have seen. To wit, he suggested increasing the hunting pressure on geese to keep them out of this region so they don't settle and become non-migratory, and also to address the issue of retaining animals that are harvested so they're not wasted, as under the regulations that exist to protect crops now. When farmers put down a goose, they can't retain it, and it seems a shame to leave an animal go to waste like that, and not one that we should be supporting. So he's made some positive suggestions, none of which appear to be addressed by this bylaw, nor in fact by other staff recommendations that I've heard so far. Instead, what this bylaw does is increases the restrictions from those that are already in place, and it actually has the opposite effect. It'll reduce hunting pressure on geese, and the non-migratory goose problem will in fact increase. That being said, I appreciate the general public safety concerns regarding firearm discharge in Sooke. I suggest, however, that the existing federal firearms regulations deal with this adequately, and on top of that, then the provincial hunting regulations deal with it quite adequately as well. So if there's a problem in regards to enforcing those regulations, either the RCMP or the provincial wildlife services can certainly deal with them. And I hope Council recognizes the distinction between some of the concerns of people that live in the rural area and have to deal with these problems, and those that reside in the downtown core that have a different perspective on addressing this issue. Some of my specific concerns, however, are that, to my knowledge, there's been no issue raised about public safety, and it certainly hasn't been raised in this forum. And if those issues exist, I suspect that the federal and provincial regulations and those enforcement agencies are able to address those issues. So therefore, this sounds like it's more of a public policy issue than a health and safety issue. The restriction on the use of on bows to target tips only essentially prohibits all hunting in the district of Sooke, and I think it was Councillor Berger that raised the issue, that she acknowledged that there is legal hunting permitted in Sooke, albeit it's bow hunting, but with the if you take away the hunting tips on bows and crossbows, there'll be no hunting, viable hunting in Sooke. It's prohibited to hunt with a target tip. As well, everybody in the community knows there's an increasing problem of deer in our community, and we have an increasing number of accidents on our roads and highways, increasing predation on our crops, and it's more of a problem all the time. We eliminate all hunting in this district of Sooke, and we'll be like Oak Bay, wondering what to do with the problem. It'll be too late to address it. I'm also concerned that some of the staff data that was presented was incorrect. The hunting regulations are quite specific. It's not a 150-meter setback from any residences. It's in fact 100 meters. And the stipulation is also that the residence needs to be occupied, not may be occupied, but is occupied. So to get down with my specific recommendations in the time that I have available, I suggest you withdraw this bylaw and send it back for further staff research to correct some of the errors and fundamentally to address the issue that was first raised, which was addressing the non-migratory goose population and, in fact, predator protection for both bona fide farmers and hobby farmers. You should acknowledge the rights of farmers that currently exist, the legal rights to hunt on their property and in areas that are currently authorized under the provincial hunting regulations. And barring a demonstrated bona fide health and safety issue concern and public health and safety concern, not put in additional restrictions where they're not necessary. And lastly, failing an ability to address those issues, Council is going to have to discuss how to compensate farmers, hobby farmers, hunters, and of course First Nations who have a Supreme Court of Canada right to access the area for food gathering and hunting. Which will all be negated as a result of this bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boucher. Okay, Councillor Ray.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering, in light of the comments made this evening, my understanding is that provincial and federal and then provincial legislation prevails over municipal legislation. So I'm just trying to make sure that I understand the comments that were made this evening. Even regardless of what was in our bylaw, if the hunting regulations allow, the provincial hunting regulations allow the use of hunting on private property with a tip outside of a target tip, that they would still be able to do that because we can't overstep provincial legislation. So I'm wondering if there's a contradiction between our bylaw and what the provincial legislation is.
Would staff have an answer?
Your Worship, we can certainly look at that and get back to you.
Okay, the bylaw is not on, not up for discussion this evening, so if we could maybe get some clarity on that when it comes forward. And I'm wondering, Mr. Boucher, is there anything you can send us in writing as well?
Sure, I could. The hunting regulations are quite specific, but I checked on this, and to that, the district can impose additional restrictions on top of the existing regulations, but what you can't do is abrogate any regulations that the feds or the province have in place. So if the province prohibits it, the district couldn't approve it, but if the province approves it, the district could in fact put increasing regulations on it to restrict it. Hence, for instance, in Sooke we have a prohibition on the discharge of firearms, notwithstanding that in the provincial regs you are allowed to hunt with a firearm in the approved areas. Sooke has closed that off entirely, and because as a result of the bylaw restriction, we can't use a firearm to hunt in the legal hunting areas. We can use a bow, but not a rifle. So that's in fact what you've done.
Okay. Thank you very much for clarifying that. Okay. And then our final delegation this evening is on the same matter. I just have Carl and Roth. Okay. Please come forward. And it's Your Worship. Thank you. And sir, your surname was? Okay. Thank you. And you'll just need to turn on the microphone, please.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak to this. I thank Mr. Boucher for his work on this. I think there needs to be some clarification. I believe that we need to have respect for farmers and agricultural producers, and I fear that this bylaw will impede that. I am a producer, and I do we do take care of livestock on our property. And if anybody has ever had a chicken or a goose or a duck or anything like that killed by raccoons, mink, I've even had bear in my yard, you can't always rely simply to call the police and wait for 3 days. We've had 5 bear sightings in our area in Connie Road over the summer in the period of 2 months. So there's a balance between respecting the rights of farmers, again, farmers that are on agricultural reserved lands, which we are. And, you know, I don't want to come across that, you know, anybody can shoot a firearm for any reason, but the protection of livestock and the encouragement of producers locally, because that affects the whole community. I sell eggs to two very well known B&Bs in the local area, and you know, I want to make sure that my livestock are safe, and I take necessary steps to ensure that. So it's not just my neighborhood, it's the whole of Sooke. There's a lot of farmers, there's a lot of agricultural producers, and I think to you know, change the bylaw, why are we doing that? Is it really necessary? And what is the big picture? I don't want us to see us become like Oak Bay. You know, we're a large area, and the deer, unregulated, are going to continually eat food that people are trying to produce to sell or to give to neighbors and whatnot. So there again is the big picture. And I am concerned, and unfortunately I didn't have time to contact ICBC, but I would be very curious to know how many accidents are as a result of people hitting deer. And if we allow that population to simply grow unchecked, like the migratory birds and whatnot, we can have real problems. We've got one road into Sooke and one road out. And if you know, if there's a serious fatality, and I have seen that in my experience, the result of even, you know, a 120-pound deer hitting a vehicle, you know, do you want your daughter or grandchildren or relative or anybody, you know, again, at risk? So if we allow these populations to explode, which they ultimately are, and I would also respectfully submit that, in my opinion and in my experience, there's a lot of hunters that respect the land, that abide by the laws, and simply to now prevent producers and farmers from protecting their land and or hunting on their land, which, you know, is in a safe manner, I think is short-sighted, and I think it will discourage the continuation of agricultural producers in the Sooke community. And so those are my respectful submissions to you.
Thank you very much. I, interestingly, was on the ICBC site today looking at the crash statistics and saw that Sooke Road and Connie was noted. It just doesn't show the cause, but I think it was in the top 5 for different sites, and I was wondering why that might be, but the deer there.
And quite often there's reportable accidents and unreportable. Mm-hmm. So if there's animals that are involved, that will come up as ICBC, and ICBC is very good at getting those numbers, and I could certainly provide that to council, and I can easily find out what, you know, how many motor vehicle accidents, reportable, non-reportable, as a result of people hitting deer. You know, we don't generally have larger animals, but it's the deer can be a real problem. And secondly, could I speak to the Connie road status, or is that afterwards?
Just get...
Or we're just doing the bylaw?
In terms of this, it's just to do with the bylaw,
okay,
per se.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, Connie Road itself would be a different matter.
Yeah, no, just with respect to the road grade. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. So we'll move on into the agenda, into our public question and comment period. And there's 2 minutes per speaker. We just require your name and address for the record, and it's for matters pertaining to this evening's agenda, with the exception of the public hearing, which has its own specific public session there. Sure, you have 2 minutes if it's on for this evening's agenda.
And I will.
Sorry to be repetitious, but since we're in a different section, I do need your name and address again for
Yes.
the record.
Krista Carley, 1844 Connie Road. This year we've obviously had a very different winter than what we've had in the past, and my concerns relate to the condition of Connie Road. We've had a snowplow driver, in my opinion, has done a great job in trying to...
This is where I have to interrupt you. I apologize. Is that that's not an item that's on tonight's agenda, so there's no public comment on it, right? So the public input session would be specifically to items on the agenda, and I don't believe that Connie Road is on here. Or is it?
She put it in under her delegation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
So her one issue was on the firearms, and her other issue was on.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor.
Is that
yes.
correct? Okay, thank you. I stand corrected, Councillor Parkinson, and I was just looking at, okay, it is there, and I just focused on the livestock, so please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. So just again, the snowplow driver and the road crews have done a great job in trying to maintain that road. But what's happened is I don't think that road was ever initially engineered to allow the weight and the type of snowplow that's on it. And perhaps I could try to find more information. But what's happened is as you approach the stop sign at Connie Road and Sooke Road, which is a high accident area, we all, I think, can attest to that. There's potholes literally on the sides and shoulders of the road. The road surface has been scraped off to the point where there's 3 feet of gravel strewn on the right-of-way on either side of the road, and it's just really made a huge mess. And I think there needs to be some sort of long-term plan, perhaps for the Connie Road, because it does seem like a very high accident area. And I would just respectfully ask council to consider that from an engineering point of view, if the snowplow should be, perhaps using a less weight vehicle or something like that to clear that road, because it's caused a lot of damage.
And that's something that's you've noticed this year. I mean, the last couple of years have been pretty mild, but so it's just with the activity this year, it's deteriorated the road.
From from my living in the area, we haven't had a winter like this, and usually that road was never plowed. It's simply people would make a pass and it would become snowpack. So to have the snowplow go up and down the road to maintain it safely, I don't think the road is made for that, and I think that's why we're getting a lot of patching, and it's becoming a real mess. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that forward and for getting that sorted. Okay. Are there any more any more further comments from the public? Okay. So we'll move into our next item then, which is item 9.1, and this is our public hearing section. And I believe we will be starting off with a staff report. And I would like to welcome Ms. Lashane forward. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. This application is for an amendment to an existing zone called the CD11 Knox Center Zone. Area A of this property consists of its 2 properties of approximately 1.3 acres of land. 2120 Church Road is vacant and treed on the north end, and then 2110 Church Road contains Knox Church and a parking area. The applicants are hoping to construct an apartment building that will offer affordable rental housing for Sooke residents while retaining the church on the site. The application is to add apartment building to Area A of this zone. The proposed change to Area A will allow a 40-unit affordable housing development to be constructed. It's intended that the building will be run by the Knox Vision Society and BC Housing. The Society has stated in their application that they're focusing on providing affordable rental units to individuals and families in Sooke. When staff are considering applications for rezoning or text amendment, we look at the merits of the site and for consistency with the official community plan and other planning documents. In this instance, the OCP designates the property town center, shown here in the orange. The town center designation supports medium to high density residential development amongst a mix of commercial and institutional uses. Affordable housing is also ideal in this location because services can be provided and accessed very efficiently. These subject properties have been identified during previous rezoning applications as the north anchor of the town center. This proposal will bring more people into the town center and will provide opportunities for people to live and work within walking distance to core services, schools, and shopping. The site also provides excellent access for transit. The final slide is the concept of how a potential new building might be laid out on the site. The covenant registered to title requires that the properties be consolidated at the time of development permit, which is also when council will consider the form and character of any future building on the property. The architect involved with the project has confirmed that the site can accommodate this proposal with the addition of apartment building to Area A of the CD11 zone. Staff has reviewed the proposed text amendment and supports the application. And I believe the applicant is here this evening if you have specific questions about the proposal.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Are there any comments or questions from members of council? Okay, so we'll move into our public hearing section, and there's just a statement here that I need to read. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act. At this public hearing, any person who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that are the subject of this hearing. Copies of written submissions received to date are available. It is important that all who speak at this hearing restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaw, and it is my responsibility as chair of this hearing to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. For those of you who wish to speak at the appropriate time, please commence your address to council by clearly stating your name and address. Then you may give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaw. Submissions must be received before or during this hearing in order to be considered by council. Members of council may, if they wish, ask questions of you following your presentation or submission. However, the main function of council members this evening is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council at this hearing to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. Everyone who deems his or her interest in property to be affected shall be given the opportunity to be heard at this hearing. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making his or her views known. Please note that this hearing forms part of this evening's regular meeting and as such is being video recorded. Videos and their contents, including any personal information disclosed during this hearing, will be posted on the district's website. So on that note, I would like to invite any members of the public forward to make any comments.
Ellen Lures, 5526 Sooke Road. I have some questions. Actually, it was another member that lives on Anna Marie Road, right on the corner on the left-hand side, and she asked if I'd ask some questions for her. On the end of Anna Marie, as you see the little bullhead there, that property was given to Highways. Now that's a Highways property, but it abuts right up to the Knox property there. So where does the road go from there? Like, it's kind of odd. That was one question, because it just stops. So she understood that it actually took in the Knox property too, but that could be an error, but it is a strange thing. The other question she had was the water issue. As you likely know, the property in behind her has been a water problem for her for a long time. And when Wadham's Way was put in, there was some relief for people on the other side of Church Road. But there is a waterway that runs all the way up and up into the creek by Threep Road there. up by Les Montan's property down into that creek behind Drennan. And I would hate to see that would be somehow covered over or the water stopped up so it doesn't run its proper course. Because we've seen that many times over the last years with developments. And for instance, Sun River, the developments with Mrs. Lunson's property, she took on more water every year because of the developments. Our property, same thing. Because of the developments not done properly, we took on more and more water. We had to dig a pond every couple of years to make it deeper so that we could take more water. So I just would hope that staff is going to look at this and make sure that the water is routed properly so that it doesn't flood the properties on the other side, because it did just on the other side, that larger lot, they were flooded out quite frequently. And I'd just like to make sure that those issues are addressed. And I'd like to know what happened about the road and why that road is just blocked in there like that. Because is it a lot now or is it a road? Or
It's the hammerhead part that you're...
that hammerhead part, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay. And does it end at Knox or does it continue through Knox? I don't know. I suppose it should show in some documents, but just a question. Thank you.
Okay, perhaps if staff could answer, it's the concerns that I heard were regarding the hammerhead in the road and then the water and drainage flow, water flow and water.
Your Worship, to answer the questions, the original dedication that was obtained when Anna Marie was constructed way back when the MOT had jurisdiction out in this area probably wasn't a whole lot of planning and a whole lot of forethought going into it at that location. So we ended up with a piece of dedication, and you can see on the drawing that's now up on the screen that it's just a widening or a wide portion of what is now known as Wadham's Way, because Wadham's Way was actually moved slightly to the north for a better alignment at the time. So I hope that explains that. The other issue was with regards to drainage, part of the rezoning process and the development permit that's required, and as well as the building permit. The proponent will be responsible to do a drainage study to determine exactly how water is going to be held and dealt with to a natural runoff without being a detriment on anybody's property. I have had very preliminary discussions with their engineer some time ago. There has been some workup done, but I haven't received anything formal. That will happen as this process unfolds.
Thank you. There are other members of the public that would like to speak in this hearing?
Hi, Jennifer Smith, 6805 Courts Drive. Just that we all love affordable housing, so any application with affordable housing in it sounds like a great deal. I'm not saying this isn't one. I'm just saying that what I'd like council to consider is that when they send this back to add in apartment use so that the owners and Knox Society could obtain the agreement with the BC Housing, they don't have any kind of conditions in there to ensure that we do get affordable housing. I'm wondering what might happen if the land is sold. So if you get the rezoning, if you leave it until the developmental stage, that's too late. The zone has already been approved, and that goes with the land, so the owners could sell the land, and then you have the possibility of an apartment building. So, and our policy is to encourage affordable housing and to include it on CD zones. So we've done that in the past on in the Beaton zone and all the other CD zones. So I'm wondering why that's not there. Then if you look at the schedule of restrictions that was on the original covenant on the property and the ones that are on now, it appears as if we have even less guarantees for the district in terms of the requirements for them to conduct the soils analysis, and them simply saying that they'll have to do it at a later stage is not good enough. I think we should have consistency in all of our zones. With all of our approvals. The other thing that I'm concerned about is that the third thing that you're being asked to amend, which is the inclusion of the apartment building being considered under RM4 zone. So the RM4, I don't understand why that's included if we're going to have the development go forward as is proposed. So it sounds to me like you have a CD11 zone that you're amending, but you're allowing within that zone the opportunity for the property owners to have an RM4 zone right within the same bylaw. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So I would like you to consider not approving that third item that they've asked you to amend. Simply amend the apartment and make sure that in your conditions that you get a housing agreement, the affordable housing. I'd like also for you to get more information for the public before it's already the public hearing, so it's a little late, but I would like to know how many units are going to be in the contract with BC Housing. BC Housing has partnership arrangements where they help people build apartment buildings, but that does not necessarily mean that they're going to be all of them affordable for the low-income people. Low to moderate is quite an extensive. It goes up to the median of 69,000 something. So we need something. Council needs to ensure that they are distinguishing between any other multifamily zone development, and if that's the case, then they should have to follow the same rules, and an affordable housing development. And there's absolutely nothing mentioned in anything in that zone or that bylaw that has anything to do with affordable housing. You've made no assurances. I'd like you to look at our 2007 affordable housing policy and maybe consider having a committee when you've only got 3 scheduled right now. Have a committee on affordable housing, because a lot of the recommendations in that policy that council had adopted included monitoring, included various means of ensuring that we get affordable housing. Not against the development proposal as it is, but we don't have enough information to know what it actually is. If it's a mix of affordable housing units with under contract with BC Housing and a mix of other rentals, we should know about that. You should know about that before approving the bylaw, and I think they need to work some more on this one. I think it's we want affordable housing in town. It's unfortunate if a delay is put in, but I think you could just choose to amend the bylaw and add the apartment building and the multifamily use without doing anything else, and then also indicating a condition, adding a condition that at the very least that our own district rules of the 30% or whatever the other rules are, which I don't have for you, but the other rules for the other CD zones of how many percentages of units should be provided as affordable housing are protected. Or you should just change it and go to a multifamily zone if that's what you're offering to them. You need some protection to make sure that somebody can't put an apartment building in there. And the other thing is with the RM4 zone, you go from 50 feet to, I had it written somewhere, but you go up to 50 feet to 70 feet or something. It's quite a 25 meters from 15 meters. It's a larger amount than that. So 15 meters to 25 meters. So I'd like you to clear that up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do I hit this again?
Yes, and that turns it off. Thank you. Is there a response from staff on some of the concerns raised?
Typically, when there's commercial in a mixed-use building, we're not concerned about the density of the site. But if there is no commercial on the main floor, we have been known in other zones to restrict the density and refer it back to the RM4 zone. So it's just to provide consistency with other zones that we do the exact same thing. And the CTC zone is an example of that.
Other members of the public have any comments? I'll call for a second time. A third time? Does the applicant wish to make any comments? Thank you.
Okay, my name's Joe Newell with Joe Newell Architect. I'm the applicant for the rewording of the zoning. I just wanted to address the previous person's comments. First of all, just with regards to the RM4 zone, that was written into the description of the rewording. We didn't ask for the RM4 zone. What we're going to provide is what we showed on the plans, 40 residential units, and the church has a meeting room that we're going to be removing from the church, and then there will be about 750 square feet in the new building that will serve the purpose of that original meeting room, and then the rest of that space on the floor facing Church Street or Church Road rather is going to be either commercial or BC Housing requires a certain percentage of the floor area based on the number of units to be amenity space for the residents, and so that will also be what's in that that commercial amenity space. I think that's how we labeled it, commercial amenity. So and then there will be the opportunity for possibly a small business or something to go in there as well. And we've also indicated a cafe on the lowest level facing Wadham's Way. It's not in the intention of the society to change that. So even though the RM4 clause is in there, there's no intention to take advantage of it. So the building will be what we show. It's within the height limitations of the CD11 zone, and it's within the setback limitations as well. So we are going to be removing the road dedication along Church Road as part of the when we get to the development permit stage, and we'll be taking the setbacks off that new property line. I just wanted to clarify too, BC Housing is, in this case, BC Housing is providing 54% of the construction costs, so they'll, like the 54% that they're in charge of will definitely be affordable, but the society also has a mandate to provide affordable housing, so there's no, and just kind of reassuring everybody that there's no possibility that they'll, not be doing affordable housing on the site. That's their intent. That's their goal. That's their sort of legacy for the community. And then there was the other issue of the drainage study. We will be engaging a civil engineer when we start the development permit design drawings, and we'll be working with them and the landscape architect to make sure that the stormwater retention or stormwater management plan is up to Sooke standards when we get to that stage. Okay.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant, Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you, through your worship. A question on the legal aspect. I think what was raised that I heard anyhow is the concern at some point of selling the property. Can you speak to the legal arrangement between the society and BC Housing and what that means in terms of any future selling?
Yeah, there's a development consultant involved with the project, Andy Orr, and I'm not sure of the. Does MJ, do you know what the arrangement is with BC Housing? Like, how are they providing the funding basically to the society?
No, sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't ask a very good question then. What I heard the person who spoke before you was the concern that the development could turn around and sell the property. So my understanding in terms of arrangements with BC Housing is it's quite a complicated process and it's a very lengthy contract. And I'm just wondering if you could add any light for people to explain how that would work legally. Okay.
It's within the mandate of the city.
I just need you to come. We can hear you, but for the webcasting, thank you.
It's within the, Cowenberg. I live on Aaronwood Drive. I'm the pastor at Presbyterian Church. the constitution of the society will not allow us to sell the property.
Thank you. A couple more questions. Councillor Parkinson, then Casper.
So I was wondering why we would change it from the CD11 zone to the RM4 zone. What's that?
Okay, so that's a question that you're asking to staff.
Right. I'd like
addressing
to know
me?
why we're
Okay.
changing it if they said that they didn't request it and why it doesn't stay the same.
Okay, perhaps staff could clarify.
Sure.
Thank you.
Through your worship, the reference to the RM4 zone is under the provisions of conditions of use. And so for this application, they applied to include apartment building in the zone. So it's a text amendment to the existing zone. But what we wanted to make sure of was that if, for example, they wanted to do a strictly residential and non-commercial building, that there was also an amenity area included, similar to any other multifamily property. When they go through their development permit process, we want to make sure that there's an amenity area for the residents and that sort of thing. With a mixed-use building, we don't look at that.
Okay.
So it's just to address those concerns if something changed.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Casper?
Yeah, my question relates to, is there not some form of a registered agreement between the Crown and the Society to ensure that it is affordable housing and that there will not be any undermining of the intent to have the agreement?
To answer that question, in the funding agreement with BC Housing, it's a 25-year agreement.
Okay. Councillor Berger? Sorry, is this a question of what's coming from, because we're sort of still in that public and I had the applicant come forward and, okay. So are there any other public members that would like to speak on this? This will be the last call. Okay, so now I'll officially close the public hearing, and Councillor Berger had a question. Thank you, Councillor Berger.
Yes, thank you. Through you to staff, sorry, the question's been asked before, but just for my own personal clarity purposes, it's still striking a chord with me having a mention of another zone within a zone. So the question then, the only difference I can see, and I completely understand the amenity portion of it, and I just loaded up our zoning bylaw that says in RM4 that there needs to be a minimum of a 10% lot area for amenities for the residents. But what is the height restrictions then? Because that is a fairly significant difference as well. So would they adhere to the height restrictions in the CD zone or the height restrictions in the RM4 zone?
The height restrictions would be within the CD11 zone.
The CD11 zone?
Correct.
Okay. I guess I can understand the previous speaker that had a bit of confusion with it, because I still see a bit of confusion with adding that sentence because it looks like we're talking about a zone within a zone. I'm wondering, just for clarity purposes for the public and going forward, would it be easier to, and again, please tell me if I'm wrong because I have no idea how to properly develop the bylaw, but could it be simpler and cleaner to just add the portion about the amenity area and not have the reference to the RM4 zone? Just because when you look at both, it does show different restrictions and it isn't clear. So for me, it sounds a bit confusing, and I'm just curious as for making it cleaner and simpler for the public to say that, to remove the mention of an RM4, but keep in or add a clause about the amenity area.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Berger, we can look at it the next time we come up in this type of scenario. We can look at the wording as we come forward with our recommendations.
Okay, are there any further questions? The public hearing is closed, so unfortunately not. I called 3 times, and then I called a final time and closed it. Okay. So at this point, Council, how would you like to proceed?
I'll move third reading.
Okay, Councillor Casper has moved third reading, and it's been seconded by Councillor Parkinson, I think. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Pearson. Microphone, please.
Yeah, thank you. And we all know, I won't go over how I feel about CD zones, but because I get to say that every time we have one. The one thing that's concerned me, and I brought it up at the first and second reading, is on this bus stop thing again. And the bus stop is puzzling me that we would turn over control to a third party. Like the approval of the bus stop design, like, kind of still puzzled by that. To me, it seems out of character, like we're turning over the design of a bus stop to BC Transit. We're asking for amenity for Sooke, yet we're turning that over to. So the people from the Knox group, which I think this is a great project, now are going to be beholden to another entity. So do we know what that is? Like, I'd like to see when we're going to turn over something like this, is there an amount of money that would be reasonable and upfront so that they know what to expect? Because it just seems to me is that the wording in the present or in the proposal leaves itself wide open.
Councillor Pearson, so we are dealing with the zone.
Yes.
So
there's governance mixed into that zone. That's my point.
Okay. So do you have a short answer, Mr. Howitt?
Your Worship, through Councillor Pearson, we work closely with BC Transit through the referral process for all our developments, and they have a standard they'd like to see depending on what bus is on that particular route. We've had circumstances in the last year or so where we've actually worked with them and we've revised their layout and their standards. We got to be sort of careful with it because they supply the shelter and everything at no cost to the district. So we work with them.
You satisfied with that for now? Okay. Anything further on this matter? And I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Casper.
Yeah, I think it's important on this issue of that restricted covenant, and I know Council had a discussion about it. I wasn't able to be here at the meeting. I just find it, and this stems back to the decision that was made in 2013 when those covenants were put in place. And I just think it's patently unfair to ask this property owner to actually supply the money and to construct a stop with a shelter when there is no bus that stops on their side of the road. The bus actually stops and drives up the opposite side of the road. So in essence, by us saying in that original condition on the covenant that we would leave it up to BC Transit to determine where the shelter would go, it will go well beyond the boundaries of their property. And normally, when applicants are required to do improvements, it's downstream improvements to a service that we supply or the CRD supplies or as a condition of the Ministry of Transportation and Highways. And BC Transit has no legal authority to dictate to us what a property owner shall do in front of their property, in particular when the bus does not stop on the same side of the road as their property. So I'm going back to what was said and the decision that was made in 2013. I think the council of the day erred in applying those covenants because I don't think anybody really thought about the fact that the bus was on the opposite side of the road, and if they were required to build a stop, technically we can only ask them to do it on their property in front of their development. And the law has clearly said over the years that when we ask for property owners to do on-site in front of their frontage improvements, it's within the confines of their frontage. And my fear is that transit could turn around and dictate, well, we'll get you to pay for a bus stop that has nothing to do with the benefit in front of your building. And so I think, this matter should be brought back to council with some additional information. And I'm going to pick up on what Councillor Pearson had outlined. And, I apologize for my throat and my voice. I'm under a little stress with a cold, but I think I've made my point loud and clear that this covenant should come back. It has nothing to do with the rezoning. It was
Okay.
never...
Would you like to make that motion, Councillor Casper?
Well, if I may,
Yeah,
that
please
the
do.
restricted covenant matter 219 come back for council to reconsider.
Okay, so that's been moved by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Pearson. Okay.
I thank you for your indulgence.
Well, you're welcome. Though I think the one thing with the bus, and I totally agree that it is on the other side, the problem with our community buses right now is they do this very long loop in one direction, and it would be great at some point if they actually returned people back to their homes. And I just say that because I've taken it from, this is way off topic, but from Sun River into Sooke, and it's great. But if I want to go home again, I have to go all the way through Kaltasset, East Sooke, and then it loops back. So you'd have to sit on it for an hour in order to get home again. And I think this bus does this one-way cycle as well, whereas eventually you want to see people return. So it could be an anticipation of the community bus system improving. So in addition to the covenant, if there's any information we could receive regarding what BC Transit's future plans are and why they're requesting that stop, that might clarify it as well.
It's Route 63.
Yes, it is, Route 63. Okay. I will call, is there any discussion on the motion then regarding the covenant? I'll call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? This motion is carried. Okay, thank you, and thank you for your patience, everyone. Okay, so we'll move on to our next item, our bylaws section. 10.1, bylaw number 558, 1781 Mini Road and 7057 West Coast Road.
Your Worship, if I can, sorry, interrupt you for a second.
Yes.
Were you moving that, the return of Covenant 219 as an amendment to this motion? Let me probably pull it up for you.
It's just, can you just clarify the question for our CEO? Thank you.
No, the intent of the motion was to bring the 219 covenant back to council.
And you're not moving third reading, you're just going to, because that's still on the floor.
No, we've already voted on third reading.
Yeah.
Yes.
They did? Okay.
This is a separate issue. Okay, thank you. But we don't want to delay the process either. Okay, so now we're at 1781 Mini Road, 7057 West Coast Road. Councillor Pearson?
I move the recommended action that we direct the staff to schedule a public hearing.
Okay. So this is all broken out, so we'll just do them individually then. So you're talking just about the public hearing, and it's been moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any discussion on the public hearing? All those in favor? Opposed? This motion is carried. The next portion is that Council direct that prior to final adoption of bylaw number 558, the owner enter into a development agreement by way of Section 219 covenant with the District of Sooke, and that Council authorize the Mayor and the CEO to execute. Moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any discussion on that item? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And the last piece, that Council direct that the 5% park line dedication be in the form of cash in lieu at time of subdivision. Moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? This motion is carried as well. Okay. So next item is bylaw number 653, Future Policing Cost Reserve. And we have a report. Is there anything further than the written amount here? Finance Director have anything to add?
To your worship.
Actually, we're just adopting. I'm sorry, so yes.
Move adoption.
Okay, we're moving adoption. Moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Berger. Discussion on adoption. We've had this presentation before. Go ahead, Councillor Casper.
So does that mean that once a bylaw is adopted, that it's mandatory that the 10% be in there? And my fear is that the 10% of the entire policing costs could be a whopping tax increase because there's no other source of money other than the small amount that we're getting from the traffic revenue. And, I was hoping that when we had established this fund, that there would be some leeway and latitude, that it wasn't automatically going to be 10% right away. And that was my hope. And again, I apologize for not being at the meeting. But, that's the kind of question I would have been asking at that time. So, is there an answer?
Does our finance director have any
Yep,
comments?
through your worship to Councillor Casper. I'm presenting this report, but I didn't actually draft the bylaw for it. So as it's written right now, you're correct. It is a 10% minimum balance, which is about 180,000 going forward. There's 43,000 currently. This year there was budgeted to be another 40-odd some odd thousand, and then the grant going in, and then so it would be the full amount of the grant in 2017 plus an additional amount to top it up. So you are correct.
So just further to that, it could be a 1% automatic increase to the taxpayers, just by the stroke of a pen for this bylaw.
That's correct.
Every, we're 6.4, so 65,000 roughly is a 1% hit to taxes. So.
Councillor Parkins.
Through you, Your Worship, what kind of events do we foresee having to use this funding for during the year that we need that kind of money in there?
Through your worship, there's often, not often, but there could be regional issues that come up. I think that's what this was looking at addressing really was major crime issues. So, we could be hit with a big bill of another 60 grand that we never really anticipated. Also to budget for getting more members into detachment and Sooke.
Okay, thank you.
There is a program that's being led by the province. It's the Vancouver Island Major Crime Unit, and they are in the works now of determining a formula for communities. So it's based on the population, the types of activity, the homicide rate that's occurred. So they're still working that out, and I think what it is, they'll probably come forward and ask us to fund a certain amount, and then if we were hit with a major crime, that it wouldn't drain the reserve, because not every municipality has a reserve. So if there's a major unit requiring a special unit, so sadly, if there was a homicide to occur with no suspects, then you would have the RCMP bringing in a specialized force to do all of this, and then we would have to pay for it. So it's similar. I think the tragic event in Oak Bay was an example that was used, but Oak Bay paid into a formula, so they were covered in that regard. So that's where at UBCM, they were still examining the formula and doing research into it. So I don't know that we're going to, I think they're hoping to announce something in April because they want to wind it up, I think, before the election. So I think that's sort of where this comes into play. But it also is an opportunity to save for future to add to the detachment as well. But in this case, so we're short the prescribed amount that's in here. So I think it's too bad you weren't at the meeting, because then we're seeing that that right away we're already pledging some funds. So, or trying to get it there. So in this case, we either do this and know that that's coming, or do we put this on hold and wait till after the budget's done? I'm just saying. Some hands, if I may go to Councillor Ray and then back to Councillor Casper.
Thank you, through your worship. So what I'm understanding then is that if we adopt this bylaw this evening, we only have 43.8 in the reserve, and that we would have to bring it up in this year's budget of 2017 to the 183,000. Which is almost 2%. Now that this has been brought to our attention, I am now struggling without seeing the rest of the budget and what's needed, because We've heard from the Director of Development Services that we have some issues with roads. So I would like to take a step back at this time, if we can.
Councillor Casper. Okay, back to Mr. Blackhall.
Yep, just through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Ray. There's already a balance in there. It's actually carried over from last year. In the 2016 budget, we also had an amount to go into the reserve. So it's at the end of the 2016 fiscal year, when we're all said and done, will be 80-odd thousand in there. And so, but the grant that is being earmarked for it is in between 80 and 90,000 a year. And yeah, so to get it up to 180, there will be a need for an additional contribution, unless the reserve minimum balance is, say, reduced. So,
Councillor Casper.
So I have a suggestion that we just hold off on adoption until we get a final idea of what's going on in the budget. I'm not opposed to setting up the fund. I agreed to that when that. It was a civilian staff position, wasn't filled, and we had actually earmarked the money. So a whole year and a few months went by. And so we decided to put that money into the reserve fund, and then once that position came on stream, then we'd start fresh. But the idea was to actually build up some money in anticipation of unforeseen. I agree with that. But you tie your hands by saying it's 10%, and that could have a huge impact. And in the bylaw, it even goes further, 20%. So 20% of how many million? 1.6? That's a lot of money.
So we don't have a motion on the floor then, so we could just, we've moved and seconded. Okay. So at this point, I could call the question then. We'll see what happens. Well, I know I can, or you can withdraw it. Well, we've moved and seconded it, so in terms of, we could postpone to budget. Do we need to set a date?
You don't necessarily need to set a date. If you want to postpone it to a particular time, like following budget, during budget discussions, anything like that. I would
say during budget discussions, when we sort of hit our protective services component, then it would be good to bring this forward at that time. Okay, so that captures postponing then. We need a motion to postpone. Okay. Okay, so we're procedurally off. I don't have my handbook with me. So we have a motion on the floor, and then are we amending it, or are we going to just postpone the motion?
This will be a motion just to postpone, which is in order after the
So I'll look for a motion to postpone. Moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Parkinson. All those in favor of postponing? Anyone opposed? Everyone's in favor. Okay, and do I need to call the main? I don't need to call the main. We're clear. Okay, we're good. Thank you. All right, next item, please, is 10.3. It's our revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw number 660, 2017. I think we see this every year. However, Mr. Blackhall, do you have anything to add in addition to what's written?
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing really to add. It is a standard report that comes forward every year that just allows us, if needed, to utilize a line of credit at the bank. And we haven't needed to use it, and I don't foresee us using it, but we are required with the agreement we have with the bank to bring this report and get your approval.
Any questions from council? Okay, so I'll move first reading then. Would someone like to move first reading? Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Moving second reading by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Moved third by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, thank you. Our next item, 11.1, is the Local Government Leadership Annual Leadership Forum. We have a report here, and our current policy covers council to attend the conferences, and this one here, we've received an invitation to attend the Local Government Leadership Academy Forum in February, and Councillor Casper has expressed interest in attending this. Is anyone else interested in attending the Leadership Academy? Council or staff have put together a rough estimate of what the costs would be: ferry transportation, mileage, course registration, hotel and meals, as per the expense policy. So there is a recommendation here. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Discussion, yes, Councillor Casper.
I will guarantee that the expenses will come in lower than what's shown here.
I think I know how you can do that too, but that's good. Okay. If you could please, after you attend, give us a report. If there's any materials in electronic form to distribute, those are always appreciated as well. Okay. I'll call the question then. Any all's in favor? Any opposed? Everyone's in favor. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Casper. We do have a couple of new business items. One of them, NB1, is the 2017 Council Convention attendance. Okay. Mr. Joseph.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wanted to bring to Council's attention that currently under your expense policy or under your expense budget line, we allocate, so far it's $27,600 each year. Now, the way that Council have an attending policy, that's for attending the AVICC, UBCM, and FCM. And the way you have been doing it is that basically whoever wants to go goes, and we book your flights and your arrangements, and away you go. Based on the reaction we've had this year, you currently would be spending close to $37,000 on who has indicated they're planning to go. And so I wanted to let you know that basically you would be over. So you have two choices. You can either vote on who goes, or everyone can go, and you can adjust your budget number. In other municipalities, not everyone goes to every conference every year. That's not to say that you have to do that. Everyone can go in your current manner. You just simply need to adjust your budget line item. And Mr. Blackhall should know that before budget because it's a significant overage.
Yes, Councillor Casper, then Loggins.
Yeah, one of the things I've advocated very strongly, and this is before you've come to the district, is that I've encouraged all members to attend all conferences. I've defended it publicly at all budget discussions and debates. I've outlined that Sooke does not live under some dome and does not live in isolation to the rest of British Columbia or Canada. And these functions, council members learn from each other across the country and throughout BC. One thing that should be noted is that we've carried surpluses in these accounts over the years, and these dollars have been plowed back into our accumulated reserve fund. So if there is an additional expense, we can draw money from our reserve fund without increasing taxes for that increase. So that's been the approach that I know has been taken in the past when there's been overages in certain areas. But not all members have attended, even though they had originally indicated that they were in fact going to attend. So yes, I agree with you. It's something to consider, but we've had numerous surpluses in that particular account. And I think this year was one example, because we did have a number of members say they were in fact going to attend a number of functions, but they did not. So, and I think publicly there is comfort that we're not going to increase taxes so that people can go to these functions, because it can be drawn upon from the accumulated surplus funds. I'll stand to be corrected.
No, that is correct. Every year when staff need to ask us in advance as to who's attending, mainly because of the hotel bookings, and there's always a rate and the proximity. So that always comes up earlier, and then they have a sense of who's attending. And then once everyone kind of knows what, because it's difficult sometimes in December, January to know what you're doing throughout the year, so you see people drop off. Last year, only 2 of us went to FCM. For example, I think 4 of us went to AVICC, 6 of us went to UBCM, and they differ every year with the amounts because this past year, 2016, it was mileage to Nanaimo, it was UBCM was in Victoria, and then FCM was in Winnipeg, and sometimes FCM is in Vancouver. There just hasn't been flights involved. And this year is different because there's mileage all the way to Campbell River for AVICC. UBCM rotates, it's back in Vancouver, and FCM is all the way in Ottawa. So right there, there's differences. Only certain cities can handle the conferences. In BC, we're limited right now to 3, Victoria, Whistler, and Vancouver. And FCM tries to move across the country all the time, and AVICC as well has been limited as well. So that's where it varies. I do find that they are of great benefit, certainly to everyone's learning, to meet other people, to share successes and failures, to find ways to go forward, to meet other people in the group. So I too encourage everyone to attend the conferences when you can. I just, it would be interesting because I don't think that all of council has been able to attend everything in quite some time. I can only think of maybe two federal conferences even, I think Whistler and Vancouver, when we all went. Otherwise, I've only flown once in my tenure to Winnipeg, and I know it's moved to Edmonton, to Halifax, all over the place. So people do choose. I think it's something that we answer to at election time each year, but we are going through the cycle, so I totally appreciate your reasoning for bringing it forward. Councillor Loggins had a comment? Okay. Back to Councillor Casper.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. It is timely that it is being discussed. One airline currently has a seat sale that ends on the 11th. And so, you know, there's an opportunity that if council passed a resolution to authorize all council members to attend the ABICC, the FCM, and the UBCM conferences for 2017, then that would probably be appropriate. And then that will allow us to take advantage of seat sales and other opportunities that may arise. So I'm prepared to make that motion.
Councillor Casper, if I may, that really isn't necessary because you're currently doing that anyway. That's where your policy is.
Yeah, but I just want to make sure that our expenditure policy is being adhered to, because if there are expenses incurred now, that there is authorization for us to do that. I'm just erring on the side of caution.
Okay, so you'd like to make that
Yes,
motion then,
yes.
that, and it was basically that council authorize all members of council to attend the 3 councillors
the FCM, and the UBCM this year.
as they can.
Yes,
or
as they
so
can.
see fit. Okay, is there a seconder for that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any discussion on the motion? I don't even think everyone can attend everything at this point, Councillor Parker.
Yeah, thank you. And just to follow up on the corporate officer's comment, and with all due respect, I just don't. The motion is a bit redundant because that's what our policy states.
Yeah.
So our policy says we can all go to all 3, anyhow. So I
But it's
don't.
expenses.
I don't see the need for the motion. Maybe if we added something to the motion with respects to what was brought forward, that if everybody. I mean, I know I can't attend 2 of them myself personally already, but if we need to allocate funds, then that would give some merit to the motion.
Is there anything you would like to add to the motion, Councillor Casper?
Well, I would just say that in past practice, we actually did receive, and I know to the benefit of those who weren't here before, a package that outlined all of the events and listing the number of people who were in fact going to attend.
We typically get that report every year, I think, once.
But this year, there is some timeliness associated with it to take advantage of flights.
Oh, you're referring to the seat sale, because usually I think it's February or March-ish, staff prepares a report where they list off sort of a rough approximation after they've talked to everyone and what the costing is. Mr. Blackhall, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, if I can add, Your Worship, there is already the budget in for 2017. It's, you know, actually we amended the budget. So you still have a budget right now, and even if you book these flights that are the urgent need right now, you're still going to have the leftover budget room. And then when we bring the 2017 budget forward, then we can look at the increase if necessary.
Okay. I think it's all in there. Councillor Berger?
Yeah, sorry, I guess I just missed the part that it was urgent because of seat sales, and I'm not sure if I communicated through to staff. I will not be attending AVICC or FCM.
Yeah, somebody has a grad ceremony. Okay, I'm going to call the question on the motion then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, thank you very much. Our last item is NB2 Canada 150 banners. I'll turn it over to our CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's unfortunate that Alita Pierce was not successful in getting the Canada 150 grant for the banners that she worked so hard to get. I've had conversation with the mayor who wanted to bring this forward to council to see if council's willing to consider funding these banners. We've got preliminary costs of $6,700 for the banners themselves, with an additional cost of installation, which would be approximately $1,000 for a total of $7,700. So I submit this to Mayor and Council for your consideration, and hope that you would support it.
Okay, and my understanding is that Ms. Pierce had applied for this through the 150 program. It was about a 7-month at least process, and only just found out in December, which is unfortunate because other communities have been able to go ahead and plan all sorts of things in the year, and we've been held out waiting till the very end to find out the status. You may recall that there was a call for artists, and then the spouses of elected persons, my husband, John Horgan's partner, Randall Garrison, and Chief Planis, their spouses actually went and reviewed the banners and made their choices. So rather than always picking on the elected officials, it was a different perspective from the other side. And then they went and selected the banners that would come forward as part of the process for the community. And then there was the salmon, smoked salmon, a number of small things sort of held throughout the year, and so this is where we're at. So it is unfortunate that we're starting this year already, and other communities have moved ahead, and we're stuck wondering what to do. So, Councillor Ray, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move that Council direct staff to purchase the Canada 150 banners and install them to a maximum amount. I'm going to recommend $10,000, and the reason I say that is because there was an option of having second brackets on some of those posts, and so we don't actually know the exact amount. So I'd like to make sure that that there's enough room to make sure that if we can put those brackets on, that we're not hampered by having to come back for it.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Casper is seconding the motion. So I have a question then. Where does the funding for this come from? Bringing us back to our amendment bylaw.
It could come from council contingency at this point of your $35,000 that you've got for 2017 council contingency for now, and then when we bring forward the actual 2017 budget, we can look at just adding it as a line. So, and it would either come from if there was a reserve, say for arts. If this is considered art, I don't know if it would be, but that could be used. Otherwise, it would be accumulated surplus or taxes.
Okay, Councillor Ray.
Yes, Your Worship, and my thinking is it is art. They ran an art contest, and there were 4 successful winners of that art contest, and that's what is on the banner. So I would hope that would fall within it.
Any other questions then? So just in terms of there's just a line, or I think, to add to this motion with funding to come from council contingency. That amendment's moved by Councillor Casper and seconded by Is there anyone seconding? Seconded by Councillor Ray. So on the amendment then of this coming from Council of Contingency, are there any questions about that and the funding? Councillor Loggins.
So just to confirm, it would be $10,000 out of council contingency was about $35,000. To me, that's quite a large portion. I don't know if it would be worth looking at splitting that with the arts budget, in which case I would prefer that it went, I don't know what our committee structure is like at the moment, but perhaps to a cow or whatever else that we're doing for art council, or sorry, art committee. But I'm just not comfortable spending $10,000 on this out of contingency.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Berger, then Ray.
Yes, thank you. And I'm just sorry, this is an on-the-fly question, so through you to Mr. Blackwell. Do we know what the balance of the Sooke program reserve fund is? Because to me that sounds like it could be a good fit to come from that art reserve fund if there's adequate funds available.
Through your worship to Councillor Berger, the balance that we carried over was $48,000, and I don't believe anything's been spent this year, and then a portion of the building permit revenues go into that reserve. So, yeah, there definitely would be enough money in that reserve to pay for
I'd be
this.
far more comfortable carrying out with what Councillor Loggins said, is to add a motion that it come from the program that it's reserve rather than contingency.
Yes, you can.
If that's the correct process, then yes.
Oops, sorry. I also was wondering what the timeline is on this. I never like doing these sorts of things, without a report on the fly with a new business motion, and also things that should be going through our grant process. So I wanted to know if there was a timeline that is the reason that's pushing this forward.
So I think the reason why there isn't a report is because one of our staff members is on bereavement leave, and she was getting all this and working on it, and that's sort of why it sort of fell through, and there isn't a formal report. But I do appreciate what you're saying there. I don't know about a timeline. I'm going to guess it's because we have seasonal banners up, and when they would come down, they would be replaced with these ones for $150. Is that a fair? Does anyone know the answer on the timeline?
Your worship, through to Councillor Loggins, we have had fairly good success with our banner contractor, if I can use that phraseology. The banners that we ordered last year came through fairly quickly. Now that we have a resolution to go forward, I can have staff look at it first thing tomorrow morning. We'll start the process. I'm not sure how long it takes, but I think it was in the realm of about a month and a half before we received the banners we last ordered. So that's about as best I can do for you on the fly right now. So.
Okay, we're still on the, okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to comment on the report. So if there is one that's in the works, I would prefer to see it before making the motion.
Okay, we're on the amendment, though. We're on the amendment to the amendment. So we're speaking to the amendment, which is about the funding now coming from the Arts Reserve. So is there any discussion about the funding coming from the Arts Reserve? All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Okay. So now we're on the amended motion. The motion as amended, which is to purchase the banners to the maximum of $10,000 with funding to come to Sooke Program of the Arts. Is that correct?
Actually, Your Worship, you're on the amendment of adding the funding component.
We're still on the amendment where we're adding the funding component. Okay. Any questions about adding the funding component? I'll call the question on that one. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Okay, and that brings us all the way back to the main motion. Okay, questions on the main motion as amended twice. Councillor Ray.
Yes, more of a comment. I think one of the things for me in terms of this matter coming before is it allows the community who have been working very hard. There's various members of our community that have been working with Mrs. Peers to get started on the celebration of Canada 150. Last year we did put, my recollection is we did put $10,000 from the Sooke program of the Arts Reserve for the mosaic, which we then didn't do. I think it's timely to move it forward. There's been, I agree with Councillor Logan's, I'm not one to do things on the fly, but we're already into celebrating Canada's 150th, and I think this would allow the people in the community who are doing all the work of trying to create events and things, that this would be a start, that they would know that they're not going to have to try and come up with this money themselves, so that they can get started in the other things that they'd like to do. So I'd like to see it go tonight.
Question, Councillor Loggins, or comment?
And I agree with that, but that's also the reason why I'm hesitant to support this, is because there are many community members working on many different projects. And so that's why I'm always, when there's no timeline, it's I know April's a far time away, but having things go through the grant process, that's why we have that process there, is to go through these requests and make that process fair for all of the community members who are doing other things as well. So it's not that I don't agree with you, it's just I don't see the fairness in that.
Any further comments from members of council? All right, I'll call the question then on the motion that's amended twice. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Loggins is opposed. Okay, motion's carried. Thank you. We'll move into our correspondence section then. Our first one is a letter from the Sooke Elderly Citizens Housing Society. They just had a question here regarding their permissive tax exemption and when it expires. So perhaps, I don't know if staff may be able to answer that. Mr. Blackhall?
Yes, Your Worship. We did, for some reason, they've been contacting or trying to contact someone, and it got lost in the shuffle. And I did, as soon as I saw this on my desk, I called them right away and have clarified this process with them. And there is going to be, obviously, a process coming forward in this year, because the permissive exemption bylaw does expire at the end of 2017. So we do need to kick it up again to start another 10-year period for next year. And I believe, the application deadline is always by the end of August. So the deputy corporate officer does have a timeline together, and I believe she'll be putting together a report probably for a soon-to-be upcoming council meeting.
So would they have missed the deadline then for 2017, or 2017 is the last year in that 10-year cycle?
Yes, everyone they're already in the exemption, then they're okay. It's just that when it expires, it expires, and council needs to authorize another 10-year period.
Okay,
so
but
they're okay. They're okay for this year.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wondered because I didn't see this till December, although their letter and then our date stamp, there's a significant difference. So they're fine for this year, and they're aware of that. Okay, so at this point then I think a motion to receive. Moved by Councillor Berger, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any further questions about this letter? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Our next one is, this came from FCM, and they are looking for member municipalities perhaps interested in hosting one of these events. And as we have staff looking into the possibility of us hosting or applying to host the TAVI Tourism Conference, when this came through on the newsletter, I thought maybe something that council may be interested in. It's likely it would be only one of the smaller venues, smaller board of directors meetings, but I do have additional information if council would like us to explore this or not. Councillor Loggins?
Yeah, I think that you answered my question, but I was just going to confirm that it didn't have to be a municipality that was in the region specifically for the sustainable communities.
We wouldn't be able to host the Sustainable Communities one because it's over 1,000 delegates. And what they do for the communities, because the FCM is very large, there's over probably close to 3,000 delegates, and then the sustainability one is less. So it's more the board of directors. And the only time you can't apply is if you're already hosting one or the other, you can't apply to host a board of directors one as well. So they want to spread it amongst different sized communities, and so that's where I think it's probably one of these smaller ones that we could look at hosting.
Yeah, I think that would be fun if anyone else is up for the challenge.
Okay. Councillor Berger?
Yes, thank you. My question is just regarding costs. Is there any financial implications with putting your name in the hat to host?
I don't know. So I did send a letter or an email and said, oh, can you send me the package? And then I'll forward that on to staff, and then they'll provide a report back to us, just like with the TAVI conference. And we can then find out if that's something we want to do. I'm not sure. I just received it and glanced at it. I couldn't answer that. If you want to make a motion then for staff to explore hosting a conference, if you so desire, based on information.
But I understand from your worship, though, that you've already asked them to send a package, so that package will then come through the system.
It'll go to staff,
So we'll
yeah.
move receipt now, and then as that package comes in, then it will end up in here again.
Oh, that's true. Okay. Or over to our corporate office.
Oh, Your Worship, if I may, I understand just waiting for the package to come. However, if you want staff to start looking into this, considering everything else we have going into budget, we should get some direction to start at least looking at some things now. Only because the RFP's dates I'm reading here is due February 10th.
We can bring it to the next council meeting, have that information. It'll just be the email, and that'll come as a correspondence item. So yes, you're correct. I'll get a motion to receive, and then that will remind me to move it, forward it on. So moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Our next item is the CRD's Regional Growth Sustainability Strategy. This is the referral. It came forward, I think, there was a letter, last year that this was going to be coming, and now this is the actual document, so that's why I forwarded it on. I believe at that last meeting, I think Mr. Howitt, did you speak about sort of what that staff are currently going through the RGS or the proposed RGS now, and another report would be forthcoming to council? Is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship. We're in planning staff and myself are reviewing the RGS. It was subsequent to the original letter that Mayor and Council sent to the Capital Regional District about some of the restrictions on our growth node and how we might accommodate that. That's all been stripped out of the RGS. We're finding that there's nothing really in the RGS now that's prohibitive for Sooke to become a known development node, a development community, if you will. So we'll have something for Mayor and Council on the 23rd of January from staff.
No, that was a different one. We've already dealt with the one about the extension to Langford. This is the actual RGS. Okay. It'll be a motion to receive because we have a report coming on the 23rd.
Yeah.
So moved by Councillor Loggins and seconded by Councillor Pearson. Councillor Ray, did you have a question or a comment?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the Director of Planning. I guess one of the things that I'm hoping that this report will do then is also outline what was taken out. It comes back to earlier comments in terms of over time, and that's doing the tracking changes. I mean, I know you don't have that document, but if there's been things that have changed from, it's been quite some time since we started looking at this about 18 months ago. Just sort of a more wholesome or fulsome things that have come out, as opposed to just.
Yeah, what we can do is include into the staff report is include the recommendations that went from Mayor and Council originally, and I don't think it was 18 months ago, but it was some time ago, that they took out some of that kind of language that was in the RGS, and really the RGS, the way it's written right now, is it's not a very exciting document to read, but it does allow us to do what we need to do in Sooke.
Okay. I think for myself, the main ones is in it's page 19 and 20 of the document, page 142 of our agenda, where it talks about the water supply and distribution. I believe in our OCP we have pushed to have water extended within our municipal boundaries, and this is where we encounter some issues within the CRD about extending water services where there currently isn't any. So I think if you could just put your lens on this just to ensure that the objectives of our OCP are met when it comes to water, because that is always an issue there. And then also when it talks about sewer extension as well, because those are what has been argued is sort of controlling the growth within our community. So I think those are the big pieces there. Okay, so at this point then, a motion to receive, please. Someone would like to make one? Have we done that? No. Moved by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Any further discussion? We'll discuss it further in 2 weeks. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. The next one is some emails that have come through regarding derelict boats. It went to the director of Salt Spring Island and then came over here to us with some information as well, and in regards to what is being proposed. This is a report to the Core Area Liquid Waste Management Committee from December the 14th, so nothing quite has come yet to the board, but this came forward. Is there any comments? Motion to receive, moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Casper. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And then we also have a letter from Mayor Hamilton of Colwood, and they are doing a review of the CRD service review and have asked if we would like to participate in this initiative. Anyone like? Yes, no, look into it further, file, anything?
Through you, Your Worship, do you have any idea what they're looking at and why this was brought forward?
I think this was triggered by the transportation service that we opposed, and Colwood did as well. I don't know what the other one could be because they could be closer into core services. So I think that one came through, and then there's this one. Perhaps our CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. This resulted as, well, the conversation started with the CRD coming to various mayors and councils across Greater Victoria, wanting to shift monies from one program area to another program area, i.e. the transportation. And it raised a lot of questions at Colwood City Council in that, do you mean that we've been paying for services that are redundant? Why are we getting requisitioned for these services where you just want to take the money from this basket and put over to this basket? So at the last CAO's meeting, all the CAOs get together once a month, and the CAO in Colwood raised it as a matter of a question to CAOs of whether or not we should be conducting a review based on the requisitions and the services being provided to our various municipalities and districts. So we're going to continue that conversation. I think the meeting's next week. And I'll report back to Mayor and Council. But this is an initiative coming as a direct result of the CRD basically saying we don't need to provide these services even though you guys have been paying for them. So that's a little bit of extra context there.
Councillor Casper?
Well, you know, I think that it's timely because there's no harm in putting a lens on those services and what, in fact, we're paying for and what we're actually getting. So, and it's no disrespect to what has traditionally happened as far as real services that people benefit by. But I think it's important, though, that it may actually create an element of rethinking what in fact is going on at the CRD. Now, my experience has been over the years that there perhaps are some things that we shouldn't be doing on a regional basis, but there are also things that I think we should be doing. And so by questioning, and if municipalities and CAOs or whoever raises the questions independent from the board, it actually will be, in my mind, a productive thing. So.
Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm in agreement. I think that when the staff came here on the transportation issue, one of the things that they were talking about was taking money out of parks and to shift money so that the trail system, the Galloping Goose and other trails, start to become part of moving of people into the core to work. And one of my concerns was, as you're moving money, and the Galloping Goose is a great place for our community to go to have a leisurely walk, to ride your bike or whatever. And so my concern is that if they're starting to manage and move money around, and then I think I read 8% increase by the CRD in the levies this year, I think it's a timely response to taking a look at what the CRD is providing. They provide a great service, but is there a way to be more financially tuned in terms of changing times and changing needs? So I would support it.
So perhaps then council can put a motion forward then that the District of Sooke advise to communicate to the City of Colwood that the District of Sooke is interested in being a partner in the CRD service review. Okay, that's moved by Councillor Parkinson and seconded by Councillor Berger. Questions? And I think we also need to know if part of this involves any costs outside of staff time as well. It would be important to know that, and if we could add something to that effect to the letter, that would be helpful. And okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And then lastly, there's correspondence for info. They're all sort of here, newsletters and different advisory notes of the like. If there's anything you would like to discuss further, let me know. Otherwise, just a motion to receive this correspondence, please. Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any further discussion on these items? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And lastly then, a motion to close the meeting and to go in camera, subject to Section 90 as stated on the agenda. Moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Loggins. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.